have thought that the tension you saw in her eyes would have been solely focused on you. But Juna Harduke, the woman who had come to your hospital bed to give you a cryptic warning, was focused on Chief Morgans alone. You were confused, of course, but she looked even more perplexed. Her eyes, like static, quickly bounced between you and the security chief. "Gentlemen," she murmured cautiously. It was as if she was tiptoeing towards something dangerous. "What can I do for you?"
"Miss Harduke, so glad we caught you here. You know it's not often I see you around. You're always so busy with your jobs," Morgan said curtly.
"Oh, just trying to make sure this whole thing doesn't collapse in on itself and drown us all." She was irritated. No, threatened. Why? She wasn't focused on you at all, but rather Morgan's, and Morgan's apparently didn't have the best feelings towards Harduke. You tried to intercede quickly. Perhaps a little diplomacy could save your plan. You quickly interjected, explaining that you needed her help. You said that you understood that she was busy and tried to smile, but you could tell it looked out of place. You tried to adopt a more solemn demeanor. You explained that you were trying to understand what happened with the anomalies, what happened to your Weaver crew, and the damages that had been done to the outside of the research village. You knew that what you were about to say next would lay all your cards out in front of her. You stared at her and emphasized, "I want to work with you." Her eyes softened. She stared at you and then back at Morgan's. "You need engineering's help, then?"
"Indeed, Harduke. We'll need a team of your engineers to evaluate what's happened outside. You and the captain will need to work together. I'm assigning you to the project immediately, so gather your team. We're headed to R&D to get tested on our symptoms of collapsing, and then we'll get the science team together as well. You'll hear further instructions within a few hours. Make sure you're around, Harduke. It always seems like you're busy with a job when a different, more important job is needed done. I'd appreciate the job I have for you taking priority over anything else you've got going on." Morgans grinned politely, though it was certainly laced with something other than friendliness. Yes, of course," she nodded. Distracted now. What was she thinking about? She almost seemed slightly in shock by a piece of news you had somehow missed, something she heard that was surprising to her, but a word or topic that had appeared normal to you. "Time to go. You said you wouldn't keep her any longer. You explained that you'd contact her later and hopefully that you'd get to know each other. You prayed that you weren't being too obvious." But Morgans didn't seem aware that anything was going on. In contrast, however, Harduke nodded her head, intently, understandingly. She'd got the message. Yes, of course. I'm very excited to be working with you, Captain. I think we'll do good work together. Now, if you'll excuse me, Captain, Chief Morgans, I do have a lot of maintenance to finish before I can get that team assembled. Everyone exchanged pleasant goodbyes. As you left the engineers at their boards and tables, you stared at your feet as you asked Morgans about why he was frustrated with Chief Harduke. "Juna Harduke. I don't like her. She's lazy. Oh, sure, she does her job. Her tasks are complete. Her knowledge and skill are even above average, but ask her to go the extra mile. Ask her to really have passion and feeling about what she's doing. She runs for the hills, or I suppose in the case of the research station, she runs to the farthest corner of it. I've just never appreciated that sort of attitude." You thought about Juna Harduke in the shadows of your hospital room, talking about inoculians and accusing Vital Flourish of wanting to kill something. You weren't sure what that something was, but one thing you were sure of. Juna did not seem without passion. Then again, you were beginning to realize that when it came to the crew of this station, you couldn't trust what you were seeing on the surface. Although, ever since you fainted, you had become increasingly worried that you were also two-faced. You knew what you were, an inoculian. But what did that mean down here? And what did that have to do with the anomalies? Malios, the doctor, said that being an inoculian
put you on their side. What were the sides at play? These thoughts pestered you as you tried to make light conversation with the chief, and then even lighter conversation with the researchers at R&D. Corb Arrows, a professor with a list of credentials that could have been compiled into a novel, was extremely interested in you all. There were a few brain scans, a couple blood draws. You could handle all of that. The thing that really annoyed you was how Arrows wouldn't stop talking about how fascinating you were. But even all that was bearable until he asked you a question you had been asked many times before. Are you Laudian? Yes. Your voice was quiet. You knew the next question. Oh, really? Really? Okay. Did you receive the Locrivac? If you were Laudian, they always asked you if you'd had the vaccine. Laudians were thought of as sort of a scientific phenomena, and most scientific or medical establishments would ask you if you had had the vaccine in order to keep tabs on your health. But you had the sense that outside countries wanted to know so that they could watch you. Rumors had spread about the original inoculeans, and biases and conspiracies had quickly spread about the entire population. You pursed your lips. You'd had to say it so many times before. In governance with the laws established by the Laudian Prime Ministry, and in accordance with Lotti's Rise Again, Rise Greater Act made in 1855 AA, I declare myself as Inoculean 22 and disclose all of my medical and social history. You pursed your lips even harder, your teeth clenched. You came here to get away from all that. You hated the stigma, but more so the acts that people committed against you due to it. Normally, you would have immediately disclosed your status, as it was the law, and also because your symptoms might give you away. However, several people were being tested for feigning, and even hallucinations. There were only 25 Inoculeans. What were these people doing here? While you were sure Juna was Inoculean, and possibly Dr. Malios, Chief Morgans had surprised you. Looking at all the people getting tested, you realized that something else was going on. There was a possibility of finding more Inoculeans here. You looked around the room at the ones who resembled your age. You might recognize them from the testing you went through when you were young. You suddenly felt your breath getting shallower. You tried to breathe deeper, like your mom had taught you. Professor Arrow's voice could be heard in the background. Captain? Captain, are you all right? You zoned out for a moment. You stared at him blankly. A sick feeling grips your stomach and esophagus. You either risk discrimination or risk being caught breaking the law. Do you tell him that you're Inoculean 22 or not?